Hey guys, welcome to another live stream. Purple Political Talk here. Today is yet another Tuesday, which means another Purple Political Talk live stream. I'm really glad to be able to be here with you guys today. And this is my first live stream since I started school, so I apologize for not going live last week. That was timing and stuff. It just didn't work out. But moving on, every Tuesday I will be going live as our Purple Political Talk live stream that we have every single week. And just quickly, so you guys remember the blue wall that I had behind me before? I decided to do some, gold stripes. I don't know if you can see. I think you can. I think it looks pretty cool, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat. So, yeah, I mean, this video is going to, or this live stream is going to be, a lot of discussion with you guys because I've been out for, a week, or 2 weeks rather, since I did a live. And oh boy, things have gotten crazy politically in the United States. And, we had those quiet summers. The summer went by without much storm politically. And the last 2 weeks have been completely insane. And I think the situation in Afghanistan has worsened. And there was a terrorist attack, and that was really bad. That was now a couple, days back. And I think that, that's really sad, the way that, U.S. service members, 13 were killed, and it's very saddening. And I think at this point that has brought a lot of debacle to the Biden administration, and it's something that's very grim. The losing of American troops is never easy at war. And I think at this point it's something that happened maybe because of lack of planning and many other things that go on with it. So I want to, see what you guys think. And today marks the day, actually. Today is August 31st, 2021. And today, U.S. troops left Afghanistan. And, I think at this point, there's no looking back. But if national security is at risk, the country will need to act like they have. And I think that we saw how the Biden administration came through, and they went back and attacked the people who attacked us. So I think it's something that is going to be very interesting to see how it develops, if the Taliban is going to be helpful to us in certain ways. And, there's going to feed. But I want to see what you guys think about this whole Afghanistan situation. I will take your comments in the chat right now. This is also what the purpose of these live streams are, chatting with you guys, catching up with my viewers, and, have content up often. So very interesting live stream, and I'm really excited for this. So I want to see what you guys think. So Political Playground says the United States may also be in danger. At this point, there is an imminent threat. I don't think there's no covering up that. And I think at this point, it's just how our groups and our intelligence and how our, government system, which really has been set up in a way that really knows how to make sure that threats are diffused, then we can probably end up seeing the actual threat being diffused, and hopefully we are not in the situation that the country is at bigger imminent risk. So let's start answering some questions. So American Prediction asks, should Biden resign? And I'm going to say something that I don't think a lot of people say. I think everyone is pretty unhappy with Biden right now at this point. I think that ultimately it comes down to a lot of different things, right? And I'm one of the people in the school of thought that believes that presidents have challenges. Always presidents have challenges. Trump had some severe challenges as president. He overcame them. Obama had challenges as president. He overcame them. Bush. Every single president has faced distinct challenges and overcome them. At this point, I think this is one of Biden's first challenges, and I think that it did get messy. We did lose 13 troops. But with all of this, we just have to realize as well that things like this happen with every president. And ultimately, when you make hard decisions like leaving a war like this, and in the manner that it happened, it was horrendous. But I think at this point, we can't look back and we call for someone to resign every time something happens, because politicians are people and they make mistakes. And sometimes it should cost them the jobs if they're very big. But I'm not one of the people that thinks that, every president must resign after they do one bad thing. And I think this is a pretty big blunder, but I don't think it's something a president should resign for. So let's see here. Okay, China is in trouble at this point. I think that, okay, we have to remember something, that China is a state that really wants to push their Belt and Road Initiative in places around the country so they can get more control of the country. For those of you that don't know what the Belt and Road Initiative is, pretty much investment in infrastructure, in business, in third world nations. And China is taking control of these places. And I think at this point, it's worrying for the United States. The Taliban at this point, I don't think itself poses a big threat to the United States. It's other groups that may arise, not necessarily from the Taliban, but, different groups, I guess. And that is what really poses a threat. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the specifics a little bit later. If Chris Christie got the nomination in 2012, would he have beaten Obama? And I think, I'm not sure. I think that Chris Christie could have been in a good position with leadership in his state. Remember, in 2012 was right when Hurricane Sandy hit. And, I was discussing this with a friend the other day. It's hard to believe that 10 years have passed since Hurricane Sandy. And 10 years have passed, and we're almost at the 6-year mark of the Obama presidency. Time flies. And I think Chris Christie at that point, he was a popular governor. His state was in crisis. I don't think it was last minute. So it was something more last minute. So I don't know how much it would have impacted the election. Okay, Seamus thinks that Russia and China are smiling. Someone joining their midst. I think that China and Russia, like Biden was saying, there are strategic competitors, which in other words means our adversaries. And, our adversaries are always going to be super, super, happy when the country is failing. And I think that this is one of those situations where the United States look like complete idiots. I don't think that we can, dispute that. The reasoning, it can be discussed, and I think that ultimately it just comes down to many different factors, but it made the United States look really bad, and to very bad extents at that. Jude, I think there is imminent threat, and I think that I don't think this is a partisan thing. I think this is a more nation thing. And I mean, if people start playing politics with terrorism, we're going to get caught up in the middle of it, because I think ultimately at this point, saying that there is no imminent threat to the United States is a little bit, not irresponsible, because everyone can have their own opinions, but I think it's misleading in certain ways, because threat matrices have shown that they are threats, imminent threats at that. And we have some important days coming up. September 11th, 2021, the 20th anniversary. And, I think that there's groups out there that do want to do terror, and it could be bad for the United States. This is what I kind of was discussing. I think September 11th, if you go back, it's always been a day that has been, quote unquote, like a high threat day for the United States. Some years more than others. We've seen bad attacks on September 11th after 2001. But, this is something that we don't know. Most years there's just safety precautions just in case. Who knows what could happen? But this year, something could happen, something could not. Will Joe Biden be impeached? There's a possibility that Joe Biden is impeached. Will he get removed from office? Absolutely not. They do not have the votes to do that. And then, as far as you get to the legality of it, I think it comes close to Trump's, Russia thing, where it's going to be really hard to make a really good case of why the person should leave office. So, not really. China has the Uyghurs as the biggest foreign visa via Afghanistan. Who would be president if Gore won? Right now, who even knows? I think that if Gore won, I think a lot of the reaction to 9/11 could have been different, meaning that the path of the war on terror could have been different, meaning a lot of these things the establishment did could have been different. We would be living in a completely different world today. Don't know who would be, there. Yeah, I mean, I'll do that too, Matthew. I mean, I am really doubting that Joe Biden will get, removed from office. At this point, it's a very big and, very big stretch. And I'm going to argue that doesn't deserve, I guess, to get removed from office. If Ross Perot didn't drop out, would he have won in 1992? 100% easily. If he didn't drop out during that summer period, he would have taken away with the election. Ross Perot was popular. He was leading in the polls, and he just decided to take a nap just because. And I think that really cost him the election. He could have campaigned, and the world would be completely different. The United States would be a completely different country, I would say, if he won there. What if Clinton resigned in 1998? Al Gore became president, and Bush v. Gore happened. Gore probably would have won Florida. I think that's pretty easy. The Russians depend on migrants from the Islamic border states and now have to watch out for the sleepers. Iran and the Taliban have gone to war. I think this is going to be something that we're going to see moving forward. There's going to be periods of instability in the Middle East. And, I think that the U.S. has kind of just withdrawn from the whole region. And that could cause, in certain aspects, it could be a positive thing for the United States because they're too focused fighting their own war. They're not going to be focused on the United States. So that's something that could be interesting. Should Maria Elvira Salazar run for president in 2024? Should she? Yes. Will she? Absolutely not. I think that she is an awesome candidate, one of my favorite Congress people. And I think that if she did run, she would have a hell of a good chance of winning. Perot was not leading in the polls when he dropped out. He had a period where he was very close of leading in the polls. But look, I think Ross Perot could have easily won that election. I think he was getting popularity, and I think he had the momentum to make the swing and completely shock the world and the party, I guess, the party system in the United States. So I think that would be interesting. What if Biden resigns? Well, if Biden resigns, the country is going to go into a little bit of mayhem. I think mostly because we haven't had a presidential resignation since Nixon, and I think that mostly it's going to come down to the fact that it's going to be two ways. If he resigns in disgrace, if something crazy happens and he resigns, which Afghanistan is not it. So if you're a Republican out there hoping that Biden is going to get removed from office, resign from Afghanistan, not going to happen. And if he resigns out of health, I think, people are going to understand. I guess that if Biden resigns, the Democrats are screwed because Kamala Harris isn't popular or anything. So there's not much I can say. I think the scenarios that Biden resigned, they really vary under the circumstances and when it happens. Salazar would be interesting. I agree. I mean, she would do well in Latino-heavy states, but hear me out. Not everywhere. I think she will do well in the Sun Belt. She will do with the same voters that voted for Trump. Those are the same type of Hispanics that would vote for Maria Elvira Salazar. What you have to understand about Salazar is that she is a figure, right, in the, anti-communist, in South America, government's regime. So she has that bracket. And I think her experience in that journalistic field, being critical of Nicolas Maduro, being critical of the government of Diaz-Canel in Cuba and the Castros in Cuba, at their moment, that really helps her out with those, communities of Hispanics that have left a lot of these systems and really have, built up new ideas. And I think that her brand of conservatism is actually kind of the type of Latino voters. If it wasn't for people like Maria Elvira Salazar, or rather Maria Elvira Salazar's kind of points of view that are within the Republican Party and, with Trump, where he really pushed anti-dictatorships in Nicaragua, in Cuba, in Venezuela, if it wasn't for that kind of school of thought, the Republicans wouldn't have made the gains in Miami-Dade County. They wouldn't have made the gains in Texas. And I think that real anti-socialism message, whatever you think it may be the case, if you think it was true, if it was not, if it was exaggerated, politically ended up working. Will there be a war in the next decade? At this point, I think that there may be a war in the next decade. Where? I don't know. But sometimes people and countries or groups of people in certain places decide to do stupid things and engages in war. I don't really think that anything that crazy is going to happen, but who knows? We didn't even perceive certain things happening, and guess what? We're here. Will the United States and Iran ever go to war? I think that the U.S. doesn't want to go to war with Iran, and I think it just comes down to the fact that the U.S. fears Iran, and I think that Iran also fears the United States. And I think that mutual respect and kind of seriousness in their relationship, that The Iranians know that if they mess with the United States, they're going to be the next Syria. They're going to be the next Afghanistan. And I'm pretty sure the Iranians, they rather have control, like strict control over their country than going toward the United States. Afghanistan now a regional problem has been for some time. Look, at this point, I think that the U.S. purpose to be in Afghanistan was over. There is no way to dispute that. They what they wanted was get rid of the harboring terrorists, get rid of Osama bin Laden. They did that, and ironically, Osama bin Laden was somewhere else. But in Afghanistan, the problem now is that people are worried about the human rights, the Taliban rule with Islam and everything, and ultimately, that's kind of now a civil problem for the people of Afghanistan. And I'm going to be one of the people that says that I don't think the Taliban is the same Taliban from 20 years ago. I think they're more modern in certain ways, but they're still strict. I'm not defending the Taliban in any way. But I think at this point, the United States' purpose was not there. You know what I mean? And clearly, it's not their place. Is Ohio still a swing state? I wouldn't say so. I think Ohio is a swing state only under very specific circumstances, which that means no. What do I think of the Canada election? Oh, I want to make a video about this. I might make one for tomorrow because I still haven't filmed tomorrow's video because I'm going to post for you guys. I don't know if you guys want me to do a Canadian election video, but that election is super interesting. So, first of all, I just love how the majority, or the majority, because it's not technically majority, the Liberal Party decided to run an election just to try to get ahead or get more seats while they're ahead, blown up in their face. The Conservative, Party in Canada has built up such a good campaign online that I think it's pretty hard for the Liberals to refute. And I think that there's still a couple of days of election, less than 20 days of election to play out, but it's really funny how it's kind of blown up in their faces. Now, with how Canada is super weird with its politics, that could mean that even though they have more seats, the Conservative Party, they're going to need a coalition. And, the NDP is a party that right now is not so happy with the Liberal Party, but I really doubt the NDP is going to work for the Conservatives. So, who even knows? What if George W. Bush resigned because of 9/11? Okay, this would have never happened because 9/11 wasn't caused by George Bush. He was just happened to be president. He probably wouldn't have resigned. Perot was done after the VP debate. What is Trump's chances of winning in 2024? I would say Trump's chances of winning, they're moderately, medium to kind of in the, I would say, toss-up range, probably between the 40 and 60% mark, which chances of winning is pretty dead heat. I think it mostly comes down to the fact that, one, a lot of people are not happy with Biden, especially independents, especially in the Midwest. Remember, it's only 10,000 voters in Arizona, and that's in the Sun Belt. 10,000 voters in Arizona, another 12 to 13,000 in Georgia, and a tiny bit up in the Midwest. It's not going to be hard of winning against Biden, and if it's someone like Kamala Harris, even easier. Now, I would say that his chances of running in 2024 are a lot lower, but I do think that Trump has a chance in 2024. I think that a lot of Democrats are thinking that, the independents are still with them in the majority, and I think people are put, in the middle, right? And some people are torn. And honestly, I think that Trump is going to start building up the same base he kind of did in 2016, that we don't want the establishment anymore. And that may work in those certain states to give him the victory. What if Clinton won in 2016? Would Hillary Clinton be reelected in 2020? I just made a video about that. Go check it out. I posted it yesterday. Salazar was a huge media figure. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, she was a pretty big name at least in Hispanic news. And I think she's kind of spun that into kind of the way that she runs her congressional office. And she's always on cable news. She's always doing these things. And I think her, positioning, I guess, as a journalist really helps her out, running her media, running her different things. If you look at Biden's approval rating on 530, his disapproval passes his approval. Do you think it will continue to go down? I think that it will go down. There's going to be a point when in 2 or 3 months, considering if, and this is only if, everything's kind of gone back to relative normal with Afghanistan. There's nothing crazy that happens, which we don't know if that's going to happen. I think the big dip was Afghanistan. And if Congress is able to do something, which at this point I really doubt because it's completely deadlocked, Biden's approval rating could probably go up over 50% again. Now, I think that going on to the midterms, it could continue to go down. I think that at some point, obviously, he's going to have to reach bottom. Should the Democrats move more progressive populist values? I think this is a question that a lot of, I guess think tankers have been thinking about. And I think the reason why they haven't done that is because clearly if they do that, they're going to get screwed in certain states, which really kind of redraws the map in many ways. The Sun Belt, I think you consider gone. The Rust Belt, there's a possibility they can win with the right candidates. But I think that right now the nationwide environment for Democrats should be status quo. If the Republican Party continues to go on, a little bit of the more populist side, politically speaking, the Democrats, it would be really easy for them to get an ad, boom, 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 and make it super easy to paint them like these people are radicals. And with that being said, if they push more progressive values, that's going to give the Republicans more ammo. So politically speaking, not a good strategy for them. Clinton would have had a tough time winning in 2020. I think that's a possibility. I think that if you go back to my video, I talked about this. People would have been tired of the Democratic rule, establishment rule at that, for over 12 years, and ultimately with Hillary Clinton there, I think that would have caused a lot of people, especially the Midwest. And I think ultimately, if you look at it, where would have Clinton lost to actually won to win the election? The Rust Belt. Those places are going to be the places that probably would have flipped. Trump is losing so much support, and season 2 is really not in the cards. I think he's not losing that much support. I think that once he starts campaigning and then once he starts pointing out certain things, I think he has a better chance of winning. I think that people underestimate Trump in many ways. Do you have any plans to run for Congress in the future? Absolutely. I really want to run for Congress eventually. I guess that my way to get into politics is probably going to be, go to a good college and then, build up connections. So eventually run maybe locally for mayor or for state house or senate, and then move up the ranks in the political parties. But at this point, it's too early to tell what I'm really going to do. What is a % chance of Biden resignation? Right now, 0%. It's not going to happen. In the future, because of health issues, because of other things, he just wants to resign because, he's not up to the job anymore. I would say a good 20% chance. I am really confident that Biden's going to finish out his term. Who do you like better, Trump, Biden, Romney, or Bernie? So, honestly, I would actually choose Trump or Romney. Biden, I don't really like how he carries himself. And I really like Trump for his policies. I like Romney for his demeanor as a citizen. But in that sense, I also really like how Bernie Sanders carries himself as a citizen of this country. I would say that policy-wise, Trump right now is kind of where I feel in certain policies. Biden has some good policies too, with certain issues like college and building that education system so more of our students could get free education, higher education. And then Romney is just, I would say he's a good bipartisan. And politically speaking, I would the thing I don't really agree with Romney is kind of how he's a more Christian conservative. I'm not a Christian conservative, so I'm in a weird place kind of between Trump and Romney, but I also kind of admire Bernie Sanders' political kind of way of being in a way with, how he runs himself. I don't agree with his policies, but I have to acknowledge he's a good citizen of this country. And I would say that every single member of Congress, they're doing public service, and that makes them a good citizen. How much would the Capitol Hill incident be the center of the Democrats' talking point in the midterms? That's likely going to be the biggest talking points. And if they do that, I think that ultimately they might fail in certain aspects because I don't think a lot of people really do care after a certain point. And I think if you look back at it, you could tell it was just a couple of idiots who decided to break into the Capitol. It's completely ridiculous, and I really denounce it. But the Democrats, they cannot afford to just talk about that, because if they just start talking about that, the Republicans would seriously take them for a walk, because it's going to be really easy to refute that. Let's see. What third party stands the best chance of becoming mainstream? I would say the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is a party that, honestly, has the real possibility of, growing itself, and it's a party that could become more prevalent after the pandemic, where people are kind of tired of government. They just want to live their own life. It's something that could certainly happen. Let's see. Hold on. I lost the comments. Hold on. Let's see. They should have just gotten bin Laden and withdrawn troops, to be honest. I mean, they could have done that, but I think that Obama administration was too busy with nation building. The Trump administration didn't get out because, one, Trump got rolled, which is completely his fault, that the generals were really able to get Trump to stay in Afghanistan because, again, and this is something I've been studying at and looking into more deeply. The military complex in the United States is ridiculous. The way that there's companies that are just set up to the military that can lobby, and I think this is one of the places where I think it's very dangerous. If you have lobbying that's going to make some politicians millionaires or give them jobs, or people in the army get them a lot of money just to do what their interest is, which is essentially go to war, it's a dangerous thing for the country. Biden could resign, but I will doubt it. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. So more. Why do people think Osama bin Laden is still alive? Because people are ignorant. Can you do videos on Canadian politics? I'm probably going to make 1 or 2 videos upcoming to the election. And if I'm correct, I think I might be able to do a live stream on the day of the election. And then it's insane because if I'm not wrong, it's one day the California recall and the next day it's the Canadian election. I have no problems with, covering the elections because I love covering election nights. I love, hanging out with you guys. So I'm going to do those 2 coverages for those elections, and it's going to be a blast. So I'm going to set up the live stream soon so you guys can, see it and I can promote it for you guys. Okay, I already answered this question. Let's see. What if George W. Bush was president today? We can't ask that question because I don't think there's a world where George W. Bush would be president today. Trudeau probably wants to unsnap the election. That is so true. I mean, it's ridiculous how this kind of blew up in Justin Trudeau's face. Pretty funny, though. And, I think Justin Trudeau is someone who, I think Canada, maybe even if it's another liberal, they need a new face. Trudeau has been in government for a long time now, and he needs a flip. And, something else on another note. I was shocked to find out that Aaron O'Toole is actually younger than Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau doesn't look a year over 35. And I was just mind blown when I found out he's 50 years old. There's some politicians that look way younger than their age, and then there's some that look way older. Someone else that I thought was a lot young. Well, there's millions of people I can take a look at. I don't want to make a video about that, but I'll make a short probably about that. Let's see. Who would win, Ossoff or DeSantis in 2024? I think that DeSantis could end up winning. I think Ossoff is a strong candidate for the Sun Belt, but DeSantis, I think, carries the Rust Belt, so that's going to help him out. What do you think Joe Biden's best case scenario would be? Honestly, I think 2020 victory is his best case scenario. I completely agree. At the point the country is right now, if Republicans were in control right now in the country, you could be talking pretty serious blowout in 2024. But considering that the Democrats are in office right now, the whole three trifectas, best case scenario, I think at this point would be the 2020 scenario. Let's see. It's too early to be sure of Trump's chances because Biden could become much or more less popular. Again, this is why, with a grain of salt, remember, take everything that's way looking ahead in the future. Unless something's coming up in the next 1 or 2 months, 3 months at most, we don't really know for sure what the general environment's going to be. And even then, things change. So remember, take these with a grain of salt. Would there have been a Republican filibuster-proof Senate if Hillary won? Maybe, but I mean, I think that ultimately for that to happen, a lot of different things that have had to happen. It was going to be hard. Let's see. Healthcare should be the Democrats' main talking point. I think that maybe that's a good strategy. Now, here's the thing. I think people are less worried about healthcare than they are about issues like the economy. The Democrats, they have some economic plan, but if they're able to push how the infrastructure bill is really going to end up helping them out. If they're able to do that, I think that's going to be, with the economy, going to be good. If they push we're going to do the Build Back Better, that's another good talking point for them. But I think the healthcare is an issue that people kind of have lost interest in. Of course, people care because healthcare is ridiculously expensive in this country. But I think our biggest fish to fry right now is inflation. It's, the economy. I mean, I'm going to dispute this right now because there's people who say, oh, our economy is doing great. You're lying to yourself. These job numbers are not, they're positive, but they're by no means they show a sign of a good economy because we have a net 2.5% less unemployment rate than we had before the pandemic. But adding to that, we're paying the price with inflation. We're paying the price with shortages. And yeah, a lot of these things don't have to do with Biden, but they have to do with the economy and irresponsibilities in the economy, like sending out checks, rampantly, increasing food stamps, things like this are going to cause more inflation. And I think that something that I've noticed, I'm from Venezuela and I know this out of personal experience. The worst tax someone can pay is inflation. And it's the most aggressive tax. Your money is going to be less. And then out of nowhere, you're going to realize, well, salaries are going up, but prices of things are going up. The economy is not a good state right now. And honestly, I guess some people don't think about inflation as a telling sign of the economy. But trust me, I think it's even more important than jump numbers in periods like this that you have inorganic money being influxed into the economy via these checks, via unemployment. And these things seriously have to go because we're not in a situation where there are not jobs out there. There's jobs out there and there's a lot of jobs out there. It's just that there's people who rather, stay at home because they don't want to work. And, honestly, they make more off of benefits. But I think that's more of the government's fault. That's going to have long-term economic stuff. So more. Healthcare is a losing issue. 100% agreed. Neptune thinks that the Democratic Party has been a downward spiral since Lyndon Johnson was president. I mean, I think also you have to acknowledge the fact that the Democrats have completely shifted kind of from what Lyndon Johnson is. I think that what really is going to cause them to spiral and could cause them to spiral in the future is the divisions of the party. I think it just comes down to that. If the Democratic Party was as united, quote unquote, as the Republicans are, which I think that since the Republicans kind of span a little bit less in the political spectrum than the Democrats, because I think the Democrats, they go from, I think, maybe a little bit more to probably equal kind of on the extremes, but they go further into the right. So I think that division of the party really, really is going to hurt them. And that could be their spiral point in the future. If Dems run on healthcare, they have to start out by admitting Obamacare was a failure. I mean, exactly. You have to think healthcare. I mean, healthcare is an issue the Republicans could run in. But yet again, the Republicans, they had 4 years. Supposedly there was a Trump healthcare plan, which never happened. And I think that the Dems are going to look pretty bad if Obamacare was a failure, so let's fix it and replace it with something else. I think if they want to run on healthcare, the only way they could do it is we're going to add on to Obamacare. Am I going to be a politician when I grow up? Absolutely. I want to, run for office. And, I'm already even, at a young age, starting to participate in my community, at a civil level, working with government and things like that, because I really do want to get there. So that's something I'm really looking forward to in my future. And who knows, the future has a lot of things to hold. So there's a lot of things. I'm sorry, guys. I really apologize I am way behind in these comments. I'm going to try to catch up. Let's see. Red Line Politics is here. Hi, what's up? Let's see. Somebody in the chat. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to catch up with comments because it's 8:34 and I'm in the comments from 8:25. So hold on. Let me regroup for a second. Let's see. Okay, this is an interesting comment about international politics. You hope Macron and Bolsonaro fall next year. I would think this is interesting. Now, I would be careful with Bolsonaro because Lula da Silva is corrupt, and I don't think you can afford more corrupt governments in South America. If there was more of a left or moderate-leaning government, even I would go for saying center-left government that is not, corrupt, and could show they really want to work for the will of the people. I think Bolsonaro could be, you could get rid of him. But Bolsonaro, I think he's holding up Brazil because Lula da Silva is corrupt, and I think that it could be dangerous. Macron, I think that I kind of wouldn't care because I think the people of France need a shakeup because they have a very big crisis in their country right now. But Macron has been a good leader, so that's also kind of something else that has been holding the country together. Let's see. Hillary Clinton's 2000 Senate campaign was absolutely mostly about her last name. And truly, you have to think about this. She ran in New York Senate. I mean, she kind of wanted to move there, but they were from Arkansas. It kind of just happened to be the chance. And no, New York, it's nice. So, yeah. Given the current political environment, how many seats could the Republicans get in 2022? Okay, so based on redistricting, based on things, which actually, that reminds me, UEP had texted me yesterday. We were talking about this, and he said, oh, Texas maps are coming September 1st. I'm like, oh my God, thank God, because I really want Congress people to actually be running for seats they can run for. Because I think it's something ridiculous about redistricting that you have is that congressmen and women are running for non-existent House seats, which ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I think you could be looking anywhere in the 20 to 30, possibly if it's a really good year, 40 seats. You like the background? Thank you. So, okay, I'll say so this is not like my studio. So I'm working in my studio. I'm designing a process of, making everything happen. So this is kind of my temporary studio that I'm in my bedroom, I guess. So I designed this wall just for the videos because I think it would look really nice. And yeah. Supply and demand is causing the prices to increase. That's true, but it's still inflation. And I think GDP could be in the upswing, but it doesn't really matter if things are more expensive. And ultimately, here's the fact of the matter. With this is going to come, even if it's supply and demand, people are going to need more money to live. That's just a simple reality of it. With that, you're going to pay, even if prices fall in the future, inflation is going to still be high because people are making more in salaries because they have to. And it's a supply-demand job market too, where McDonald's, for example, so before that, you would earn minimum wage there. They're paying, in some cases, $15, $16, $17, $18, $19 an hour. So that causes some insane inflation because we have to remember some things that people don't understand about the minimum wage. Minimum wage is the minimum, and you're supposed to work up from there. And you're not supposed to always stay at the minimum. You should be able to, rise up in your career. If you, for example, didn't go to college, which is usually the people that end up in those jobs. So there's people that go to college and end up in those jobs too. So I think that's interesting. Let's see. The crime rate is increasing by a lot. And I think it just really comes down to the fact that in most big cities, the Democrats have control. This has always been an issue in big cities because, again, more people means more crime, more possibility of crazy things happening. The crime rate in Chicago, and this is worrying for me because I have an upcoming conference that in Chicago next summer, and I'm really worried they might move the conference. And I really want to go to Chicago because I've never been there, but Chicago is a place where crime rates are through the roof, really dangerous. And, it's because the police doesn't have the resources. That's the simple reality of it. Besides the Northeast and Alaska, are there any other states that prefer moderate conservatism over social conservatism or populism? I would guess like Arizona and Georgia. Those are just states that still have bases in the populist and social conservatism. But moderate conservatism has proven to be popular there. Utah, another good state for that example. Let's see. The country's still wobbling from last year. Yeah, I mean, this is a crazy situation. The country has been turned upside down and obviously going to have long-term impacts. And I think that we have to take a look at this. But, I mean, I think it's really been, bad since the third and fourth round of checks and how long unemployment has been going, how long the eviction moratorium has been extended. That's the real problem why prices are going through the roof. Because, something else that, for example, people don't have to pay rent, so they could go do whatever else they want with the money. And I think that it just creates fiscal irresponsibility with the people that they're not, giving, the government. They're taking away money from the government, using it for other things. they don't have a job, which doesn't, the productivity is important. So I think it's important, to discuss those things. Let's see. When you grow up, you're going to be the governor of Illinois. That's interesting. Something else I wanted to talk about. If any of you are from Louisiana, which I know I have some subscribers in the past that I know are from Louisiana. I hope you guys are doing okay from Hurricane Ida. I think it's a pretty bad situation down there. As a Floridian, I've lived through a couple hurricanes. Nothing that extreme, but my prayers and thoughts are going out to you. And I think it's something that a pretty bad thing. Let's see. Politics are a corrupt career, unfortunately. I would rather be a campaign manager. Campaign manager is actually a really fun, okay, so me personally, you guys can't see this because I kind of just analyze videos, but one of my real things that I love to do kind of in everyday life is organize and make sure that organizations and groups are getting their objectives done. I do this, for example, at school with projects and clubs and things like that. I love that aspect, but I also love being the ones to get inputting with decisions, making sure that everyone has a better everything. Would you be more looking to be a mayor, governor, or be in the legislature? So I like the being mayor or governor in the sense that you're kind of like the main figure and you have a little bit more of a say than in the legislature. But I would also love to serve in the legislature. I just want to serve the country in some way. Let's see. You're looking more to a universal basic income, but ultimately, what's going to cause? It's going to cause the same thing that has happened in a lot of places. Not everywhere, but in most places, UBI has caused, big inflation. Venezuela is a great example. So let me tell you guys this anecdote. So a couple years back, before an election, the Maduro government decided to instate a thing called it's called the Patriot Card, which pretty much was the thing that every holiday or something, they inputted money into that account. What happened? The masses started printing money, inorganic money out of that, and inflation went through the roof. That is when the Maduro government got inflation through the roof. And I think it's ridiculous, the amount of inflation that we have. But UBI could cause real bad implications. And I think with the way that we're looking at things right now, we don't even have UBI right now at a big extent. And look what it's done to the economy. Let's see. If you didn't hear the answer, you can go back. But pretty much what I answered was that they probably shouldn't, and the reason why they haven't done so is because the answer for that. Okay. Thoughts about adding more states to the union? I think it's an interesting thing. Now, I would really be careful with how I define a state. So, just to make sure that no one gets mad, I would say don't do it. But I think, for example, the DC plea for statehood is ridiculous. I mean, it's a city and it's a federal district, and ultimately they should probably get, I would say, a voting vote in Congress, but not in the Senate. They don't deserve 2 Senate seats because ultimately they don't have some characteristics which are important of a state. They have certain services, and I think it would be a complete mess. So I don't think so. Now, to just Jimmy's question, do I think that lefts control the school system? For the majority, yes. I think that at least public school systems are really controlled by the left. Now, what I've seen and what I've noticed is that there are a lot of charter schools, and especially in charter schools, that have more conservative views in the system. And I think that the left controlling the school system could be dangerous. And I think it comes down to political indoctrination. I think the way school system should be run is kind of ideologically you vet, candidates to be on the school board and make it in the way that you get appointed, but it's kind of like an independent commission, right? And I think that way it's going to be better for the country because people are not going to be worrying about things like critical race theory, like some Republicans are, or like how Democrats are worrying about mass mandates and things like that. So ultimately, I think there's probably a different perspective that school boards can be ran by. But in my eyes, the best type of schooling is going to be charter schools. Charter schools give that competition in education, which I think is important because without that competition, and I think that this kind of shows why, in a sense, capitalism is a good system, that if you don't have the competition, people are not going to be as, wanting to excel. And I think it also kind of brings better results because, the competition is what gives them more funding. Will there be a 269 tie in the future? I think the answer is probably not, but there could be. Will the GOP filibuster the debt ceiling and shut down the government? At this point, I think that they're gonna do so, but if they did this, I would agree with it, because the debt the U.S. is right now it's ridiculous, and I think they're really gonna have to redo their budget and make sure that costs are getting cut down, because I think that right now we need fiscal conservatism to recover from the pandemic. Afterwards, we can do more of the spending to improve schools and kind of the spending that goes with infrastructure. Infrastructure, I see why it's a good thing to do now, just because of the amount of jobs it's going to create. But yet again, we're paying a price on it. So let's see. Is Puerto Rico statehood based? I mean, the thing with Puerto Rico, again, I think Puerto Rico, if you're gonna choose a state to become part of the union, I would choose Puerto Rico, because they have the more characteristics of the state. And I think ultimately, when it really comes down to it, if the question was, should Puerto Rico could become a state? Yeah. Should we add more states to the union? No, because then people are going to make the argument about DC. And I really do think the argument about DC is bogus, in my opinion. Again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But, I think that with DC, they should be kind of absorbed by another state, I guess, the non-federal parts, and they could get congressional representation just for that district. They make it a rule that, DC itself must always be in one or two districts, depending on the population. Let's see. There are tons of conservatives who run an education system, but the ones that matter, I mean, there could be conservative running education system in rural parts of America, and even sometimes that's pushing it. But where it matters, where you have the big amount of students, it's very liberal run. And I think to a certain extent, that's dangerous. I'm going to give you the example. Miami-Dade County Public Schools, I would say is not, I wouldn't say the whole city, the whole county rather, is far to the left, but it's in certain ways being run a little bit more to the left than some other school districts, but it's not as bad as some of these like Northern Virginia school districts. Which brings me to a question I saw here. What is my opinion on critical race theory? As a Hispanic, I think it's the most ridiculous thing that ever exists. And I think that out of many minorities, I think Hispanics are one of the groups that really think critical race theory is ridiculous, because as Hispanics, in Hispanic speaking countries, this has never been an issue. And I think that, it comes down to the fact that, and one of the things I think really happens is people are spending too much thinking and coming up with some ridiculous stuff. And I think critical race theory is horrible. And I think if you're teaching someone that, they're not valued as much or these things, it's not good, one, for self-esteem and stuff like that. But two, it's just simply not true. The country has overcome the difficult moments that we had. And we have to admit, there was horrible moments in this country where there was clearly a divide on how people were treated by the color of the skin. But we are no longer in that country. And yes, you could argue that there is still impacts. And of course, it's kind of like, I guess, like, if this is the analogy I like to use with it. And it's kind of because a lot of these minorities, they were kind of reintegrated into society, which sounds horrible, but I think it's the reality. And it's kind of sort of like if for example, if you migrated to the United States, when you first join, you're gonna have nothing to kind of join the story. You're gonna have nothing for the most part coming down for the story. I'm gonna give you the example of Italians in New York City. A lot of them came to this country with nothing. But now they built up, a generational wealth. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of like communities focused on CRT are worried about. And that is, the generational wealth gap and things like that. And of course, it's going to be tough at first. This happens with Hispanics. This happens with all communities. And simply as time goes on, the generational wealth gap that a lot of people are worried about, it's going to get better. But I think that it's pretty ridiculous. But I mean, everyone has their own opinion, I guess. How long have I known UP for? So I've known UP very, very closely for around a year and a half. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see I can do that. So Political Playground wants me to show my letter for Trump. So let me get it right now. So, okay. This is the letter I got from Trump back in 2018. So it's a pretty cool signature letter. You can see that, but it's a pretty good, cool letter I got. And it was actually very interesting to write for the president. And so this is something I recommend. Write to any politicians and you could get like a letter like these back. I wrote to Trump about something that's really not partisan and he responded. And I really enjoy in writing to these politicians because then I could express my my views to them. Okay. Charter schools are very mixed, but on average have poor results. I mean, I don't think it's true. And another benefit that charter schools have in my eyes is you have these programs that in many ways they're better because they prepare students for the real world. Public schools have been really conservative with the programs they implement. And charter schools have more freedom to, specialize on things. For example, there's some charter schools that focus on a dual language program where they study, in English and they also study in a foreign language. There's charter schools that focus on business. There's charter school in Michigan that I saw really cool that focuses on aviation. So I think that also attracts students and makes sure that students have the resources to be in the passions that they have. There's charter schools that have medical programs and things like that. And public schools have started to introduce magnet programs, but with charter schools, you have the benefit that the charter school has complete control. But overall, actually, they have, higher results. Let's see. Yeah, this is true. I took a long break probably January to like June. I took a break because of school. School should be mostly apolitical. Yeah, 100% agree. But at this point, there's nothing to do. Do I support the California recall? I really don't because I really think the California recall is kind of not rooted in I think something that's really recallable. I mean, I don't live in California, so I wouldn't know, but I'm kind of neutral on it because I don't know really how to feel. But Newsom was in big trouble. I think he's starting to catch up a little bit. He's not as much trouble as he was 2 weeks ago. For this issue, I'm neither because I don't think it's my place, to talk about it. I mean, if you look at it at certain perspectives, I think that if you were like to probably categorize it, and again, this is not my real place to comment on this issue, but I would say I would be pro life with certain exceptions, and yeah, but I think that's certainly not my issue to talk about, right? No, Matthew, I think critical race theories is not completely overblown. I think that is something that really is underlying themes in our education system. You may not know it. I don't think it's this in certain school districts. It's really bad. The trainings they make their teachers do and things like that. But in education, there's underlying themes. Trust me, I've experienced them firsthand. Where you're in class and a lot of these things are pushed onto you even without people knowing. And I think it's dangerous because one of the things that we saw in schools in the past is that they're supposed to be apolitical and teachers cannot influence what students believe, but in certain ways, what they're showing them, and for example, showing articles and things like that. And that way, maybe I don't think they were instructed to, but there's teachers that do that. So I guess that is pretty bad. I do know what critical race theory is. I think it's pretty simple. It's pretty much kind of public school systems in many ways training teachers for racial bias. And saying that black students are under advantage and they're they in many ways less than white students and white students have privilege. And I think that in this country it's simply not it. Let's see. Okay, I finally caught up with the chat. I mean, hallelujah. I mean, after 54 minutes. I finally was able to catch up with the chat. Let's see. Some people think Bernie could have won a presidential election. Most moderates and a lot of Democrats actually vote Republican if he was a nominee. I think most independents and a lot of moderates are going to vote Republican. And I think it just comes down to the fact that he is outlandish in the way his ideas are far away from the political mainstream, which would really, be hard for him in many ways. I do know what critical race theory is. Bernie Sanders would have easily had a better shot in 2016 than 2020. I would say mostly based on the fact that the country was in a completely different place, in that they really wanted that populist leader because we had so much years of control of, I guess, of the establishment. Do I think Governor DeSantis will win in 2024? Who knows? I think that he has a high chance of winning. I think a lot of people over exaggerate, his state of political, being underwater and stuff. I think he easily goes on and wins in 2024 if he does run, especially against someone like Kamala Harris. What will the Republican House majority be in 2022? 20 to 30 seats. I'm leaning more to 20. I don't think they're going to be that many gains, but they're going to make certain gains, especially if redistricts or maybe refaces. Districts are run or drawn the right way. So 30-seat gain, 20-seat gain, that'll put them between 10 and 30 seats, 10 and 30 seats in my eyes. Do you think that Trump took some populist energy from Bernie over that past 4 years? Yes, absolutely. And I've talked to a lot of people that share that they voted for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primaries. They really wanted Bernie to win, but they ended up voting for Trump because he closely relates to their point of views. And I think that's something that has happened. And ultimately, the support has swung more to Trump for the populist voter because I think it was one group of voters. And let's suppose that an establishment Republican got the nomination, but Bernie Sanders won the Democratic nomination. Bernie Sanders would have won the presidency. I think it just came down that election, especially in 2016. It was based on the populist message. So ultimately, it was that. If I could pick any other country in the world to live in, what would it be? Or is America your number one? So, as an immigrant and as a person who's experienced many different cultures, I, for example, spent a lot of my summers in the Dominican Republic because my father had certain businesses there. I spent time in Costa Rica because my family's from there, Venezuela, and I've had the opportunity to quote unquote live and or not live, but spend extended time almost if I lived there in a lot of places. And the United States certainly has a lot of things that a lot of countries do not have, which I think is awesome. If I had to choose 2 or 3 places, I would love to live. If I want to retire somewhere on the beach because I love the beach. And then if it had to be because of political reasons, I would love to live in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is such a good country. It's very quiet politically. There's not much going on, and you could still make an impact because it's a very good society. And then if I had to pick another country, I'd probably pick Brazil or Portugal because I'm really into Lusophone countries. Let's see. So writing to Biden, when you write to the White House, it takes months. So that letter I wrote February something, and I got a response back August 27th. So it takes time. Let's see. If Cunningham didn't have that scandal where he had won in 2020, easily he would have won. I think that it would have been an easy race for him to win. He just got completely blown out because of that. Let's see. How has school been? School has been great. I've been really enjoying it. I have a pretty busy schedule on school because sometimes they schedule you for pretty hard classes, but it's a challenge and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm really enjoying one of the classes I'm taking because it's a lot of maps, a lot of things. So pretty fun. Overall, it's been pretty fun and I'm really enjoying myself. Yeah, Cunningham looked like a fool. I mean, ultimately that race was completely blown out of water because it was ridiculous. As an aspiring politician, what degree do I think I'll get? So my educational plan, like after high school, is likely going to probably be somewhere around the fields. I think the best field to graduate in just to start off is business. And then I want to get an MBA and maybe a degree in law. And I probably want to do like a minor or 2 in government and public administration, something around those lines. So pretty much a bachelor's in business, I guess, with minor in government and public administration, and then move further with an MBA and then a law degree because I think that could be really useful. and what university I'm planning to go to. So based on where like I'm currently am, I think that I could get into like an Ivy League. So that would be something that I want to do. Out of the Ivy Leagues, I really want to go to Yale or UPenn. Those are two of the ones I want to go. UPenn is really good for business, so I want to go there. But things can change. Interests could change, but I'm pretty sure I'm where I want to be with business and stuff. So ultimately, I think that that's somewhere I want to go, which is interesting. And if they're the top colleges in the nation for these programs, then I really want to go there. So Matthew, I think that I'm a moderate, but here's the issue. I would consider myself my political affiliation, I'm a rational moderate, right? If I think the Democrats are completely beefing it, I'm going to lean more towards the Republicans. And if I think that the Republicans are beefing it completely, I'm going to lean more to the Democrats. I'm a moderate, and I don't really have a political party affiliation. So, and that doesn't, it kind of like my views reflect more when I do these type of live streams than when I do something like predictions and things like that. Well, yeah, because in law, that's a pretty big issue. What would have happened if Gillum and Nelson won in 2018? Would it have changed Florida politics? I really don't think so. I mean, if Gillum won, it probably would have been a little bit more different. But Nelson was there, and he still lost, so I don't know at this point. You're a pragmatic progressive that disagrees with the Democrats on some issues. I'm a really rational person, and for the people that get to know me, my political affiliations are really to the moment. And if I have to call out or defend someone because I think they're getting unfair treatment, like for example, at the beginning of this video, Biden, I think he's getting completely unfair treatment with the situation in Afghanistan, just because in certain cases I think it's ridiculous some of the things that people say, but I think it's something that you have to take into account. Your Senate prediction is 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats. Interesting. I haven't made a Senate prediction in a while, but I think my last prediction was 50-50 or 51-49 in favor of the GOP. I see Paul Ryan is pushing back on the Wisconsin GOP. I mean, Paul Ryan has kind of lost a lot of his political power that he had. He's kind of falling into the shadows. It's getting interesting what ends up happening. Opinion on Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and Phil Scott. So I think Joe Manchin he thinks he's the president of the United States because he has that swing vote in Congress. Ultimately, I think I like how he's bipartisan and he sticks with the Democrats when he thinks it's right, and he disagrees with them when he thinks he's wrong. Kyrsten Sinema is a moderate and radical obstructionist. I think that a lot of the stuff she does is just to piss the Democrats off. And I think that she just wants to win the Republican voters to win her election. So she's just running for re-election at this point. And Phil Scott is, I would say, a liberal Republican. So I think he's interesting. Let's see. Do I like my state senator? Well, my state senator is actually a pretty big force in Florida politics, which is State Senator Manny Diaz Jr. So I think he's a pretty strong force. So I think he's a pretty interesting person. So I think he's someone who's pretty interesting, and he has a lot of force and power in Florida politics, which is always interesting. Would I rather vote for Cuellar or Fitzpatrick? I would vote for Cuellar. I think Cuellar is a little bit more of a conservative, Democrat. And Fitzpatrick, I think she's been a little bit flip-floppy with a lot of the issues, so I would rather Cuellar. In the future, Republicans are going to gain a lot from a lot of minorities, and I think that ultimately the Democrats are going to be focusing on winning back white voters, and I think there's going to be some sort of party shift. And ultimately, what's going to end up happening, I just think is, and I've said this in the past, that Democrats have one campaigning issue. They win a group and they focus on a group, and great, they do moderately well with them. But then the next election season, forget about them, let's move on to the next group. That cost and lose and not focus on a lot of groups of voters is going to cost them. Example, in 2016, they forgot about white working class voters. Then in 2020, they focused that completely, but they made gains with Latinos in 2016, but they beefed it with Latinos. You know what I mean? something that could really end up being interesting. Do you think that if CRT hadn't been introduced in the school system, it would have stayed out of the political eye more than now? I think it's simply that's the case. And I just think that this whole CRT thing, it's just been a product of the pandemic. People having time to think. Sometimes the gerbil isn't spinning in the right place, and I think that it's something that's radical because many places that have had influences on education like this ended up being pretty bad governments. And any government that tries, and not necessarily government but body that tries to influence education to that extent to brainwash children, you have a pretty bad government or whoever that is on their hand. I don't think it's really going to affect his re-election campaign because people are probably going to be over it by then, and I think his hands are going to be forced. It's going to be really hard for and I think this is different. If the election result today, completely different story, but we're talking about a year ahead. I think it's going to be really hard for someone like Charlie Cruz to say, "Oh, DeSantis didn't want you guys to wear masks a year ago," and plus, I think people are going to say, by that point, people are going to be tired of COVID, and they're going to say, "Oh, screw the mask," and I think that's something that's going to really help him out more than hurt him. Oh Lord, it's 9:06. So it's 9:06. I have to, do a couple of things for you guys. I'm gonna film tomorrow's video. I'm still deciding what I'm gonna do for tomorrow, but you guys will see tomorrow. And before I go, I did want to ask a question. What do you guys prefer for premiere times? Do you guys prefer I premiere at 3:30 or at 12:30? What works better? I think if I premiere at 4:30 or 3:30 or 4:30, or 4 o'clock, I'm gonna be able to be at the premiere. I can make the premiere at 12:30 too. It's just I think more people are going to be able to watch live with me on the premiere if I premiere at 4 o'clock. So 3:30 p.m. my time. So that's very interesting. So yeah, I'm probably going to end up doing that for tomorrow's video. I'm not sure. You guys are going to see the post because I'm going to post and do a couple community tab posts to show you guys what I'm doing for tomorrow's video. But yeah, so guys, I want to really thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to continue to post constantly. I'm behind with shorts. I really seem to think that you guys really enjoy shorts. Some of my best performing videos have been shorts, so I might continue to do that. It's just that those take a little bit more time to edit and stuff. But for the time being, I'm really excited to continue with the channel and grow it with you guys. And I'm really excited that I have my same subscribers that are always here. And yeah, so guys, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.